All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we are going deep on indefinite articles in Spanish.
Yeah.
Un, una, unos,
I
unas.
love it.
We are going to be pulling from a really fun YouTube video I found by Jaime Lara Español. So if you
Oh.
want to check that out for yourself.
Mhm.
But, grammar can be a little bit of a headache sometimes.
Yeah.
So we are going to make it fun for you today.
Oh, okay.
And so Jaime, in his video, he starts out with a really simple example. He says, tengo un euro.
Mm-hmm.
I have €1. But I noticed that in this case, it's like doing more than just representing the number one.
Yeah.
What is going on there?
I mean, that's the key thing about these indefinite articles is they're not really about quantity in the same way that we think of, the number one.
Yeah.
It's really telling us that there's at least €1, but there could be more. And it's pointing to a member of a group.
Right.
Euros in this case without specifying which euro.
Huh,
So
right.
like if you said, you see a dog running in the park, you're not talking about a specific dog. You're just saying there's some dog out there.
I see.
So that's the difference between like indefinite and definite articles. Definite articles are like the. It's like, I know this one.
Okay.
Indefinite is like, oh, this is a new thing.
Gotcha.
It's unspecified.
So Jaime also mentions that these indefinite articles are often interchangeable with some,
Right.
like algunos or algunas. But is there a subtle difference there?
Yeah, there can be. And it's not always like a one-to-one swap.
Right.
But, some, I think, tends to lean towards a larger,
Okay.
less defined quantity.
Interesting.
So, like, if someone says, hay unos pantalones en el suelo,
Okay.
there are some pants on the floor, it implies that there's, maybe a pair of pants someone left there or something.
Like a specific pair.
Right. But if you said, hay unos pantalones en el suelo,
Yeah.
then it's just like there's a bunch of pants on the floor. It's less defined, less specific.
So like if someone's pants fell off the clothesline, you'd probably use unos.
Right.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And, Jaime also points out this rule about feminine nouns that start with a or eight, like águila for eagle.
Right.
It seems like it should be una águila, but it's actually an águila.
Right.
Why is that?
So this is where the history of the language comes into play.
Okay.
Because a lot of those words actually originally started with an F.
Oh,
Centuries and centuries ago, and so the pronunciation shifted over time.
interesting.
But the grammar retained that little trace of the original F.
Oh, wow.
So you end up with un águila, and it's not just with águila. It's
Yeah.
with like a lot of words in that category, like hacha for axe or agua for water.
Right.
They're all feminine nouns, but they take un in the singular.
Huh.
And then in the plural, they do become feminine. So you have unas aguilas,
Right.
unas aidas, and so on.
So it's like the plural reclaims that femininity.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
And what about words like talleras for scissors?
Oh, yeah.
He says that's always plural in Spanish.
Yeah. Always unas tijeras.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, you think about it. You never really use one blade of a scissor.
Right.
They come as a pair.
Mm-hmm.
And so the language reflects that.
The inherent plurality.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's like gafas, glasses, pantalones, pants, guantes, gloves.
Oh, yeah.
All these things that kind of come in a pair.
Yep.
They take the plural form with those indefinite articles.
Okay, let's talk about uncountable nouns.
Okay.
So Jaime talks about things like water, air, and love that we don't typically use indefinite articles with.
Right.
And I guess that makes sense because they're uncountable.
Yeah.
You can't have like a water.
Right.
But then Jaime brings up these situations where you actually can
Yeah.
use an indefinite article with uncountable nouns, like un tipo de vino, a type of wine.
Right.
So how does that work?
Well, because you're specifying a type.
Right.
So you're creating a countable category
Gotcha.
within the uncountable.
So it's like saying like a genre of music.
Exactly.
You can't count music, but you can count genres.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it.
So I feel like the indefinite article helps us kind of categorize and make sense of the world around us.
I think so. And it shows that, language isn't always about like rigid rules.
Right.
It's about being flexible and adapting
Yeah.
to express meaning in the best way possible.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So
So that's a good start, I think.
yeah, that was a good overview of the
Yeah.
indefinite articles in Spanish,
Yeah,
pulling from Heine's video.
absolutely.
And we're going to
Keep going. Keep going.
You know what I think is really interesting about these indefinite articles is like how they're almost like a secret code
Ooh.
that adds all this extra meaning that you don't even realize until you really like start dissecting them. Yeah. Hamby gives these really interesting examples. Like
Yeah.
he talks about ordering un cafe at a cafe.
Yeah, right.
It seems simple enough,
Uh-huh.
but
But you're not just asking for any coffee.
right,
You're implying like a single serving.
a cup of coffee.
Yeah, cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And that is doing that.
It's like setting the scene
Yeah.
without explicitly saying it.
Exactly. And it happens all the time.
Right.
In Spanish, another example he gives is like, hay un coche en la calle. There's a car in the street.
Mm-hmm.
Again, straightforward on the surface, but it implies that this particular car is noteworthy for some reason.
What do you mean?
Like maybe it's parked oddly, or maybe it's a striking color. Like it's not just any car. It's a car that like the speaker wants to draw your attention to.
I see. So the indefinite article helps us understand what the speaker is focusing on.
Yeah, what's important in that moment.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and that's happening subconsciously for native speakers.
Right.
You know, we don't even think about it.
Yeah.
We just intuitively understand that.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So, what about compound nouns?
Okay.
So we talked about like ropa de niño, children's clothing, where you don't use the indefinite article with the second noun.
Right.
Jaime said that's because they act as one unit.
Right.
But then he mentions you can use un with the first noun, like un café con leche.
Right. So café con leche is like a type of coffee.
Okay.
Wouldn't say like coffee and milk
Right.
in English.
Right.
It's one concept.
Yeah.
But un café is countable.
Right.
So it's like saying one coffee.
Gotcha. So it's not about the number of words in the phrase, but the underlying concept.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And this actually brings us to something that Jaime doesn't specifically cover in his video.
Okay.
But you can actually use indefinite articles with adverbs.
Oh.
And even entire phrases.
Really, adverbs and phrases.
Yeah.
Give me an example.
Okay, so like, imagine you're describing how someone walks.
Okay.
You could say, camina un poco lento,
Okay.
which means like, he walks a little slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, un poco, a little,
Right.
is an adverb modifying the verb camina.
Okay.
But we're still using the indefinite article un.
So it's like creating a mini phrase a little slowly
Mm-hmm.
and treating that as one unit.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the same logic applies with phrases.
Oh, wow.
So like if you want to say someone was slightly shocked, you could say, se quedó un poco en shock.
Okay.
He was a little in shock.
Wow.
Here, in shock is functioning as a unit.
Gotcha.
And un poco is modifying that entire unit.
So fascinating how Spanish can be so flexible and nuanced like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, these seemingly simple words like indefinite articles can be used in so many different ways to create subtle shifts in meaning.
It really underscores that, you know, grammar isn't just about memorizing rules.
Mm-hmm.
It's about understanding the logic behind it.
Yeah.
And using these tools to express your...
In creative ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have covered a lot of ground with these Spanish indefinite articles.
Yeah, we have.
We have seen how they work, where they get tricky, and even how they reflect a bit of history and culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is time to put our knowledge to the test.
Okay.
What do you say?
I'm up for a challenge.
All right, so for this challenge, I'm going to give you a few scenarios.
Okay.
And you tell me how you would use or not use
Okay.
an indefinite article.
Okay.
All right, you
Yeah,
okay?
bring it on.
Okay, scenario number 1. You're walking down a busy street,
Mm-hmm.
and you see someone carrying a guitar case.
Okay.
How would you describe that in Spanish using an indefinite article?
Okay, so it's one person and one guitar case. So I would say, vi a una persona con un estuche de guitarra.
Perfect. You used una for the person, which is feminine, and un for the guitar case, which is masculine.
Right.
All right, let's change things up. Now imagine you are at a party,
Okay.
and you see a group of musicians, all with guitars.
Oh, okay. So now we need the plural. So, había unos músicos con unas guitarras.
Exactly. You switch to unos and unas
Yep.
for the plural. Great job.
Thank you.
All right, final challenge.
Yeah.
You are at a restaurant, and you are super thirsty,
Uh-huh.
and you want to order a glass of water.
Oh, okay.
How would you say that?
So this is where it gets tricky because we know water agua is uncountable.
Right.
But I need to specify a countable unit. So I would say, quiero un vaso de agua, por favor.
Exactly. You found a way to make the uncountable countable.
I did.
By specifying the container.
Exactly.
A glass.
Uh-huh.
Wow, you aced the challenge.
I feel very proud of myself.
Me too. And for everyone listening out there, remember, becoming fluent in a language isn't about memorizing every single grammar rule.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the logic and paying attention to how native speakers use it
Right.
and just having fun with it.
Exactly. Have fun.
So keep exploring, keep practicing, and keep those ears open for those fascinating indefinite articles.
Yeah, you never know what you might discover.
You never know what you might find.
It's a whole world out there.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.